this sequence, we're going to learn that volunteers fit into the multidisciplinary team. We're going to talk about the volunteer role, the qualities and the values that volunteers should possess. And lastly, we're going to have a look at what a volunteer can and cannot provide. What is the multidisciplinary team approach to palliative care? It's a key feature of the way we work. It's about assessment, collaboration, and management of symptoms. It's also about advocating on the behalf of the wishes of the patients, the families, and the caregivers. It's about implementing multiple strategies to address the needs of the individual and adapting the team composition in response to the changing needs throughout the disease trajectory. It's also about the use of advanced care planning. We revise and review the person's plan of care, and it's also about working together to provide the best end-of-life care. Volunteers are an integrated part of the team. Most volunteer services work closely with specialist palliative care services. In 2020, 48 palliative care volunteer services operate across New South Wales. Having the multidisciplinary team in smaller communities can't always be possible. This is because of lack of staff, lack of volunteers, and sometimes services are nurse-run, nurse-only, or maybe there's just one doctor in the town. In this situation, the role of the volunteer can be vital in helping people to die better in these small places. There's so much important work for volunteers to do in this space. The next point we're going to talk about is the volunteer role. Volunteers enhance quality of life. They can offer psychological support to clients, carers and families, comfort and compassion through active listening, respite for the main carers, bereavement support for families and carers, a sustained relationship. They can also assist with enjoyed recreation, activities and hobbies. They can accompany them on outings and even be part of the Life Story program. They can also assist with reading and writing, preparing light meals and drinks, and giving hand and foot massages. They can be helpful with providing information about services, providing assistance with service administration, fundraising, and community awareness raising. You might be wondering, what are the different roles volunteers can play in different settings?
Our volunteers can be a really lovely way, not having a health professional involved with their care, someone who's more like a friend or a confidant, someone that can support them to be able to stay at home, maybe to let family members go out and help do practical things around, to support them at home, and just be an extra friend in a lot of cases. When people have an illness that can't be cured, it can be quite isolating. So it's good for people to have access to volunteers who have an understanding of what it might mean when they're approaching the end of their life. Yeah, I think a good thing about the volunteers is that they have a different perspective on what's happening. Sometimes having someone outside of that can give patients the opportunity to discuss things that they might not be able to with the family, in a non-judgmental sort of environment. It's nice to have someone who's there just for you. They're led by the patient, what the patient wants.
In the home and in residential aged care, the focus is on the client as a person. It's really important that the volunteer matches up with a client. So we want to know a bit about who the volunteer is and who the client is. It's about relationships that may be long-term. In these areas, there's limited supervision, so volunteers really need to know when to ask for help. In the hospital or in specialist palliative care units, care is person-centered. This is a formal environment where specialist and interdisciplinary teams may provide a bit more supervision. The relationships that you can build in these settings is usually a bit shorter because people are in hospital or in a hospice for shorter periods of time than they spend at home.
Hi, my name's Ingrid and I volunteer with Eastern Palliative Care because it's a service that I know I'll need one day, and so I'd like to give back to it now.
My name is Gwyn and I volunteer with Eastern Palliative Care because I want to help people and their families deal with a very traumatic period in their life.
I volunteer for Eastern Palliative Care because I like to help people.
Richard Reid is my name, and I'm an EPC volunteer.
I've learned about living.
It's very moving.
My name is Crystal Wallace and I'm the Senior Coordinator of Volunteers here at EPC. So we've got 144 people who volunteer with us, which is really exciting. They're an amazing group of people. Working in this industry is not easy for volunteers, but the people who come in and work with us are such quality people and make such a difference for our clients.
I'm Margaret. I've been a volunteer with Eastern Palliative Care for about 9 years. People who are on our program usually are getting on with their lives, and they often have a huge joy of living with what they've got left. We do laugh and we have fun, we have conversations. It's a privilege to spend time with people who are on this last part of their life.
I hear the most wonderful stories of people's lives. The awareness that every day is important impacts on me too. We take life for granted.
It really makes you appreciate your own life. I'm amazed at the level of support they provide and the level of professionalism. The most common response I get from people is, wow, that's fantastic. How do you fit that in and how do you do that? Because I could never do it. Nearly anyone could, and nearly anyone would find it extremely valuable.
I've been a volunteer with EPC for about 10 years. Wherever the need is, that's where I go. It's fascinating to hear someone's story. It's a bit of magic, really. Someone like me walks in with no real agenda, really as such. And I find that clients actually really sort of take a load off their shoulders. There's a lot of humor. So it's almost like I'm the comic relief. It gives me a lot more meaning in my life, gives me a lot more balance in what I do. And I think it makes me a far better person.
I think it's really important.
Being able to provide that support for them, I really find that very valuable.
I actually think more people should do it.
Seeing somebody who has had this diagnosis and is still making the most of life, it's a lesson for us all. Yeah.
How does the role of the paediatric palliative care volunteer differ from someone who works with adults? The role is very unique. You stick with one family for quite a long time, and you become very involved with the family. Even post-bereavement, the periods can be prolonged. It may be more complex to detach from that relationship. Volunteers may be involved in supporting siblings, helping around the home, going on outings, a listening ear for parents. Volunteers may form strong attachments to the family, the siblings and the child.
Massimo is our third child. When he was 3 months old, he was diagnosed with myotubular myopathy, which is a weakness of the skeletal muscles. 1 in 100 live over 10 years old. So we knew that we had limited time. We had a child with a life-limiting condition. When I heard about the volunteer program, I thought, oh no, I'll be fine. I don't need that. I'm going to be okay. I had concerns about having a volunteer just with somebody who I didn't know coming into my house. I have all my friends around me. I can pick up the phone and talk to my mum or my mother-in-law, you know. And then I realised it is something that I'd like. I'd like someone to come around and to be on my team.
The matching that the palliative team did was good, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And we clicked straight away.
Yeah. She was just like the fill-in mum that I needed. You know, someone to help me do shopping, somebody to help me fold washing, someone to help me, you know, hang it out, to do homework with my older kids. Debbie was great.
You can't push a stroller and a shopping trolley at the same
time. And there's only so much my kids can carry or we can carry. Even things like loading the car, you know, having a shower, things like that was difficult when Massimo wasn't well. And having a volunteer there to sit with him in the lounge room while I had a shower or while I had a 15-minute power nap because I've been up all night long. Debbie really made our life easier. You know.
And I came unencumbered, I think.
Yeah.
Remember, because
definitely.
You know, you had friends that were happy to help.
Yeah.
But they couldn't be there all the time on a regular basis, and they came encumbered with their own children.
Yes.
I always made sure that Anna came first. And by the end we were sorting the washing together and chatting, because that was the important thing, was the talking. And I realised that over time that's what mattered to Anna. It wasn't actually what I did, it was being there. Of course, the biggest challenge was Massimo's death. Anna could speak to me without me falling into tears, which would then make her upset as well. We could talk about it quite practically. Whilst we talked about that possibility of Massimo dying, it was a very hard reality that came out, because he'd been so healthy and well. It's actually been important for me to keep in touch with Anna since Massimo's death, and I like to think it's been important for you.
My boys are always like, you know, when's Debbie coming over?
Another hug.
If a family was considering using the Palliative Care Volunteer Program, I would highly recommend it. The care and the extra help, you know, is something that I never expected that I'd need. I've always been independent and I can do this on my own. And then if you just sit down and have a cup of tea or coffee with somebody and debrief about your day and how difficult it is, it helped me be a better mum for my kids. Yeah, it definitely made our lives easier.
What are the expected qualities and values of palliative care volunteers? As a priority, volunteers need to be non-judgmental, committed to the principles of palliative care, be interested in understanding the values and beliefs of others, and are free of the need to convert people to their own spiritual, religious, psychological, social, or medical opinions. They are free from the need to fix or solve people's problems. They have a positive approach and emotional maturity, sensitivity, empathy, sincerity, and they understand the needs of the person they're caring for.
Number one best quality, listening skills. You know, it's actually hard to listen for most people. You need to be able to fit in. So, for example, you know, you might make a cup of tea, or you might offer to go shopping, or take the person for a drive, or anything like that.
The role of the volunteer is a social one. They're not a healthcare provider or a home care provider. It's really important that volunteers don't provide heavy domestic duties or maintenance, that they don't transfer or lift clients, don't have anything to do with medications or advise on anything clinical. They shouldn't be an authorised witness or a spokesperson, and they never should accept any money or material gifts or gifts in any kind. It's important that volunteers do not provide personal care or nursing care such as shaving or cutting nails. Volunteers are not to use clients' personal belongings or give them their personal contact details or promise what they cannot deliver. You may be wondering, why are personal and professional boundaries so important for volunteers? Boundaries structure how volunteers act, so being under-involved you're not going to be very helpful. Being over-involved potentially could cause damage. Boundaries are about keeping everyone safe. When I was a young nurse, a very senior nurse taught me something very important. When you're caring for somebody, their grief is not yours. It doesn't belong to you. What does belong to you is being there and supporting them through their suffering. It's really, really important to have these boundaries so that we can keep turning up each day to do this really important work. It's about self-care and providing a safe environment for the people we're caring for and ourselves. What does a healthy volunteer relationship look like? The relationship is limited in scope. It has a clear purpose and it's a one-way relationship. It's really important to support the person and not have your own needs met. It's limited in time. Once the relationship ends, that's it, it's over. Volunteers are there for an agreed time. When the services are no longer needed, the relationship comes to an end. From my experience caring for people at home, it can become really overwhelming having so many people come to the home. I remember one patient saying, "Are you here for the washing or are you here to be the nurse?" What's important here is when you go to someone's home, say clearly who you are and what your purpose is, and help them plan out who's coming and who's coming when, so they know who to expect at the front door. How are volunteers supported? It's a rigorous initial and ongoing training. This training is like safeguarding. The training helps us to cope with limited resources, like we talked about in communities that don't have an interdisciplinary team. It's a buffer against the everyone knows everyone issues in small places. It helps with ethical dilemmas, privacy and confidentiality, and is supported by a volunteer coordinator and linked closely with a specialist palliative care service. So what have we learnt with this sequence? Palliative care volunteering is such a rewarding role and probably one of the most rewarding volunteer roles that we can do. It's a precious gift of time and acceptance. One of my favourite sayings from Dame Cecily Saunders is, "How people die remains in the memories of those who live on." This is where volunteers and specialist palliative care services can really influence how communities grieve. What communities see when someone dies goes on with the people that are still living. And if we can make what they've seen okay, their bereavement is going to be much better.